Think we're ready to go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of My Endurance Live. Tonight's topic is um, really exciting because I actually have a marathon that I'm racing this Sunday. So it's a strategy I'm going to be using going into it. So I thought I'd share it with you. If you're new to the group, welcome. And if you're new on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching this from, my name is Eric, and this is My Endurance Life. We go live every Tuesday and share on a topic of interest, either with myself sharing something about running or a topic that came up in the group, or when we have special guests that come on, coaches and other athletes who share with us about stuff that they want to talk about. So tonight's topic is how to negative split your next half marathon or marathon race, but not only just negative splitting it by running a faster mile pace every mile per mile, because that's negative splitting too, but how to strategically do it so you don't balk or hit the wall. And then in this strategy, we actually negative split twice during the race, and I'll get into the details a little bit later. But the reason I want to talk about this is because a lot of people have the misconception of banking time, and it's actually the opposite of what we want to do when we pace, because everybody feels good at first and they have this preconceived notion that they're going to be running slower at the end, so they might as well get as much time in the bag first, and then it like I said, then you end up running slower. Like you go into it with that almost like a goal to run slower, so I'm going to run faster first. But before we get into that, as always, I want to give a couple quick shout outs to the members in the group who ran over the weekend.
Hey, what's up? Eric here. Gonna interrupt the training call real quick while we recognize our group members, and I want to personally invite you to join the My Endurance Life community. You can go there by clicking the links in the description below, and that will take you to myendurancelife.com. Or you can just pause the video and go to myendurancelife.com, click on the blue button that says join the team, and you'll get an invitation to join our team calls like you're watching now, and get access to live face-to-face training with myself, our special guests that we have coming in and sharing with different training techniques and strategy and super cool stuff about running. Also, while you're at myendurancelife.com, you can also download our free training guides, anywhere from a half marathon to becoming an ultra runner. So that's myendurancelife.com. Click on the blue button that says join the team, or click the links in the description below. Now, let's get back into the training.
Thank you for sharing that. Group members, share your Medal Monday post. I know it's early season right now. A lot of people aren't running or racing. But as the months start warming up and spring and running season really gets upon us, like we get a lot of Medal Monday posts, and it's one of the funnest things for me to do is to share your wins. Our races are a celebration of our training. So if we go into it with that mentality, like it just makes racing so much more fun. Okay, so like I said, I am running in the Surf City Marathon this coming Sunday. And if you are familiar with the race, or if you're not, it's in Huntington Beach, California, and it is a notoriously flat course. It runs all along the coast, does a couple little out and backs to get the mileage in, but it's really, really flat. And if you have been around My Endurance Life for any length of time and you know anything about me, I'm primarily a trail ultra runner. So running flat is really uncomfortable for me. So I'm looking forward to challenge myself again and really putting down a good time for this marathon. Good time for me. And I wouldn't say that I'm fast compared to like most road runners, but I'm a good average runner. So I'm going into it with a time goal of around 340, and then I'll explain how I'm going to use a negative split strategy to get me to that time goal and push the perceived wall back as far as possible. So, like a lot of me, I love learning about running. I love trying new stuff and applying new stuff, and I'm always trying to stay in the know with new techniques and strategies are going on out there, because as our sport gets more popular, marathon running is pretty established, but as ultra running gets more established and there's more science and data out there, that training techniques are changing. And so this training technique I actually learned from Zach Bitter. And I was listening to one of his podcasts or one of his coaching calls that he was on, and he brought up this point about banking time and how newer runners often do this. And I'm guilty of it too. Like I used to bank time a lot, and like most people, like I ended up running slower at the race. Sometimes I'd hit my time goal, sometimes I wouldn't, sometimes I'd beat my time goal. It just all depended on how the day rolled out. But without a doubt, I would be running slower at the end of the race with banking time. And so what he said is like, what if you ran that race in reverse? What if you made the first half of the race feel super, super good and prolonged the inevitable wall as long as you can, especially in marathon racing and even half marathon racing? There is going to be a point in the race where you start to get tired, where you start to feel bad, your legs start to burn or something like that. It's just part of the game, especially if you're going for a time goal too. That no matter what, you are going to feel tired. So he said, why not delay that for as long as possible, but do it strategically so you can still keep your time goal. He says, and it really doesn't matter the length or the distance if you go about it smart, that you can even, and he's done it, run faster at the end of a 100-mile ultra marathon than when he started. And so that really, really made me start thinking about my pacing strategy. And then also, I was listening to a podcast with Andrew Huberman about endurance. It was a 6-part series. It was really in depth, really involved. And he was saying that um, science has proven with endurance athletes, especially, that if you are running or exercising at a sustained state, your body is looking for fuel from one fuel source, probably the fuel source that can sustain that effort level. And then eventually that effort, that fuel source gets depleted because you've been pulling off of it for so long. And he says, this is when people or runners, especially marathoners, hit the wall, is when they've depleted that energy source. And so lots of runners, and me, guilty of it too, we hit the wall and then we back off. And then either that crushes our time goal in the wrong way, like we never get there, or some cases we have to walk, some places, some people just end up quitting, which is the worst case scenario. But he says, if you actually go into the mindset that when I start getting tired, I'm going to switch into another gear and run faster. And so what he says is now that effort level has intensified. So now your body's going to start looking for fuel to sustain this new higher intensity. So it's going to go look in your liver for more glycogen stores, and it's going to start looking into other areas of your body and start pulling more energy out of these other areas. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So, and then if you know or have listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast, like his data and his research is pretty solid. So, I tend to trust it. That made me start thinking about my marathon pacing strategy, learning what I learned from Zach about the negative splitting and prolonging the inevitable wall, and also what Andrew Huberman said about getting into these other energy stores. And yes, I'm going to be taking on gels at strategic time intervals, and I'll explain that a little bit as I go along too. But a gel is still not going to offset the amount of calories that I'm burning through the race. A gel is about 100 calories, and then I plan on burning 2,000 to 3,000 calories for the length of the race. So there's no way I can take on enough nutrition running this hard for this long to compensate. So the strategy is, and then I'm just going to use my paces, and this, I believe this will work for all paces. It's because it's just a strategy. It doesn't matter how fast you run it. If you apply it, it'll probably work for you. So my time goal is a 3:40. So that breaks down, I forget what the actual minute per mile is, but I'll explain how I did the math. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the first half of the race, the first half marathon, at 13.1 miles at an 8:50. 8:50 pace is really sustainable for me. That's a conversation pace. It's going to get me to that halfway point under 2 hours. And I know I can run an 8:50 pace for the whole race, and I won't meet a time goal, but I know I can do that. So that's a comfortable pace that I'm going to use to prolong that wall. Because lots of times if you go out too fast, especially in a marathon, you hit that halfway point and you're like, shoot, man, like, how am I going to run another 13 miles? Like, I'm already getting tired. And then you start trying to overcompensate, like taking on fuel, which could upset your stomach, taking more gels or taking walk breaks and all that stuff just comes in later down the road if you go out too fast, too soon. So I'm going to run the first half at an 8:50 conversation pace, really holding myself back. Doing my best to really not get caught up in the race at the beginning and just really hold back. That's the whole point of the strategy is to hold back the first half. So if you're running a half marathon, the first 6.5 miles, just jog it out. Then I'm going to step it up a gear. So the next 10K, the next 6 miles, I'm going to run at an 8:30 pace. So that's picking it up 20 seconds a mile. And then I'm now tapping into that higher gear. And then and around the 8:30 pace is really like my target pace kind of for the race. So it's going to feel comfortable there. So for the next 6 miles, I'm going to start racing. This is when my race starts, is at the halfway point. And um, along the way, so I'll get into my nutrition strategy too. So I plan on taking a gel every about every 45 minutes. So that's about every 5K. And then take a gel. And then so 5 gels will get me through the race based on on the math and the time zone. I'm going to take one right before the race starts and then a gel every 40 to 45 minutes after that. And then at the halfway point, definitely going to start taking on, I carry my own electrolytes. So I'll be sipping on electrolytes throughout the whole race. Really won't take on any water unless I feel like I need to, but my handheld will get me through the race. I run with a handheld at all times because like I talked about last call, I'm not into trying new electrolytes the day of the race. So I didn't see what the race is providing. So I'm just going to run with the electrolyte drink that I know works for me, which is, and I can carry it in a handheld and I can also carry my phone and all that and not have to worry about getting to the gear drop off after the race. So that's my nutrition strategy, a gel every 5K, and I'm carrying my own electrolytes and my handheld water bottle. Okay. So now I've run the first half of the race at an 8:50. Now I've run the next 6 miles, the next 10K at an 8:30. And then what I'm going to do from that point on to the finish line, so the last 10K, is I'm going to drop it down to an 8-minute flat. And that is really going to help me so now I'm running slower, or I mean faster than my target pace. So now I'm tapping into another fuel source. And I'm going to explain how to do this all through training too, because this isn't something that you just want to show up the day of the race and try. So I'll explain after I get done with this next little segment about how I apply it during my training and how I'm proven that it works through my training runs, and how I applied it and how I applied intervals and tempo runs to get me to feel good at running these faster paces, even though it's faster than my target race pace. So I'm going to finish the race running an 8-minute mile. And then what I was doing during my train runs was actually dropping down to a 7:45, the last 1.2. So depending on how I feel, if I'm really feeling good, I'll drop down that last 1.2 when you start getting closer to the end and you get, just that's when the crowd's there and you're cheering. And so it's easy to get that adrenaline rushing again, that last mile, little less than a mile too, and really like start picking up the speed and picking off and hopefully get a new PR. So that's what I'm going for. Okay. So how did I apply this during training? So like I said, like you never want to show up the day of a race and try something new. So if you are familiar with Sage Candidate or Kofuzi, Sage Candidate is a well-known ultra runner and Olympic. He made the Olympic trials a couple times, so a really established professional runner and coach. What I learned from him when he was helping Kofuzi, who was a Boston qualifier, really good marathoner. He was saying that apply more race pace runs into your long runs, and race pace strategy runs into your long runs. So you're not in for a shock when you show up for a race day, because a lot of training, and this is only specific for like time goals. If this is your first marathon or your first half marathon, just go out there and finish a race. Get used to the distance. Find out what your body's going to do, how you're going to react at the later miles. But for somebody who is really focused on a time goal, apply race pace training into your long runs. And so what I was doing is on 3 of my long runs, I did it on a 16 mile, an 18 mile, and a 22-mile long run. Is that I applied this strategy to my long runs. I ran out at my opening pace at about an 8:50. I think what I posted in the group showed like an 8:45 on a 16-mile day. And I posted that because it's like I really nailed it that day. It went really, really good. And so I'm hoping everything goes as good or better on race day. So apply it during your training runs. So a 16-mile run, I went out first 8, I ran at 8:45, 8:30, and then I think I finished at like a 7:45 for the last 4 miles or the last 4 miles or something like that. And then same thing, went out for an 18-mile run, ran the first 9 miles at an easy conversation pace. Still like, still considered like a race pace. I was running, but within my perceived effort level of like a 6 or a 7, able still to run and talk and carry on the conversation. And then really dropped it down, and then dropped it down again. And every time I would drop it down, my mind's telling me no. It's like it's saying like, Eric, like you're getting tired. Like, what are you doing? And as soon as I would drop it down, like something would happen. Like more endorphins would kick in, and not only am I using the same muscle group, but in a different way. So now my stride has opened up a little bit. And so now my hips are starting to feel good again. And then my calves are starting to feel good again, because my feet are now making contact faster. Or are not really faster, but it feels faster because my cadence pretty much stays the same. If you look at my cadence stays pretty sustained around like a 184. But because of the different stride length now and engaging these muscle groups in a different way, that it's making me feel better, even though I'm running faster at a higher level. And then that last mile where you really kick into the gears, just pure adrenaline, just trying to like really hold it down, just like feel proud of yourself at the end. So um also during my training, I was incorporating well under race pace intervals. So that way I can, when I go out for my race pace day, for race pace, my race pace actually feels really manageable. It feels like a jog. And so what I mean for that is I would work in 5Ks and 10K speed training days into my marathon training, running at least a minute to a minute and a half under my target pace. So if my target pace was a 9, I was running a 7:30. And one day I went out and ran a 7-minute 10K, which was really good. And then on the way back, the last like half mile, I took it back to what felt like a jog, and it was still an 8-minute pace. So by incorporating faster than race pace training into your program, your race pace is going to feel really sustainable. If you only train at race pace, that I've noticed that I fatigue a lot sooner, even though I've been running at that pace a long time. It really doesn't change. Go out, try it. The more you test, the more you try, the more you learn about yourself, what works, what doesn't. This is what really is working for me. And because I consider myself an average person, and I've just been running a long time to be able to apply this, that I'm nothing special. Since I'm nothing special, anybody who's like me, or if you consider yourself like me, an average runner, this might work for you. So I'm encouraging you to try something new. And it's a pacing strategy that I'm really excited about, because I've never felt as good running faster at the end of a long run than I have been using this. Did I miss anything? Oh, how to do the math. Okay. So, doing the math, uh, for, for you might be easy. For me, I had to use Google and just did a time calculator. And what I did is, you can go on a race pace calculator and figure out the two 10K times for a marathon. Each time you negative split those, and then also the first half of the race. So the first half of the race running an 850 is like equals out to like a 156. And then the next 10K is going to be like around a 56 minutes, and then the next one's going to be, I think, around like uh, I forget, but anyways, it equaled out to 2 hours and 35 minutes when you added all that up together. So that's how I was able to find the paces to hit my target zone. So hope that helps with somebody who's not good at math, because I needed to Google it. Okay, now our squats challenge. This is super exciting, super exciting. So since this is a leap year, it's 29 days.